Floppy Waffle 69 here, and today we are going to be going through and looking at the USS Iowa, the Tier 9 battleship in our Down the Line series going to the Montana. Now, of the little clips I showed you in the beginning of the game, I wasn't there to, basically toot my own horn or anything. Like that wasn't that hard to achieve those results in this thing. But I did want to show you that this ship is capable of finally, consistently, at least in my playthrough of 20 plus games, in order to film this content, and I think hundreds of games I've played in this thing, can finally reliably land those Citadel ribbons on ships that can be Citadel, and just continuously hit the ship and chunk ships for lots of damage, 10,000 plus damage. I adore this ship. I love this ship. And it really pains me to see a lot of players, sadly new players, say that the Iowa is not that good of a ship, or it is not capable as a battleship in 2025. And I just flat out disagree with them, because I feel like if this ship is positioned well, and it played properly, I feel that this ship can reliably achieve high damage games and only be an asset to your team. Now, we all have had those Iowa, North Carolina, basically USN battleships sail around broadside and actually get slapped out of their mind. We've all had those teammates. It happens. I've been slapped in my USN battleships before, especially early in game. It happens, all right? Whatever. But I'm here to hopefully not only give you tips and tricks on how to get better results from her, but also just tell a little bit about her, like I always do here in the beginning of the videos, as I dig around under the hood and, get some soft stats for you and kind of encourage you to play a certain way with certain builds that work for me. Again, you might have different builds. Other YouTubers or whatever might have different builds that work for them. Personally, the upgrades, the captain's build that I have, the ones that I showed you previously in this video, work for me reliably. Now, just so anyone's out there asking, well, why do you have to take that slot 6, I'll show it to you guys real quick, that artillery plotting room modification 2, blah, blah, blah. In my opinion, there is no reason to play the Iowa or Montana if you're not going to slot that in the 6 slot. I have tried, believe me, I have tried the faster reload. I have tried secondaries on this thing. They do not perform reliably and consistently like this Artillery Plotting Room Mod 2 does. That is why I highly recommend you take that not only in your Iowa, and when the Montana video comes here later on, I will 100% be recommending that as well. You will achieve better results, because every battleship commander, the one thing I think a battleship commander wants is to land more shells on target. I believe that is like the one thing the majority of battleship commanders would want, and that is going to help you do that. As you're already not able to take the aiming system mod 7 that gives you the 7%, this I believe will give you, is it the 11%? Yeah, minus 11%. So better than other battleships in that regard. So please, please, please slot that in slot 6. Now, a lot of people, now going back to what I was saying, a lot of people saying, oh, this ship isn't capable and it's just not good anymore. It's really been power crept. I'm not going to necessarily disagree with you guys on the power crept department. Obviously, that just is inevitable in a game like this. But with that improved heal that she gets, the whole USN Montana line gets, that Artillery Plotting Room Mod 2, I think she's fairly comfortable to play. Finally, we have a battleship that can achieve over 30 knots. Oh my God. Which is, again, a double-edged sword, because you get to areas quicker, which is good. But then again, you get to areas quicker, which means you're less inclined. Oh, basically, what I'm trying to say is if you get to an area quicker, it could be a bad thing because you find yourself out of position and getting focused down, basically is what I was trying to say. The only downside I have on a ship like this is her outdated armor layout, and I'll get to that here in just a quick second. But it is good to touch base on some soft stats. I'm using the NA WoW's numbers website. And again, you can use Tomato GG to see the win rate differential, and I know a lot of other guys do that. So those are both great websites I would recommend using. But you do see that in regards of the win rate category, the Iowa is dead last with only 48.15%. Now, a lot of you might see that and be like, oh my God, that's, wow, the bottom of the barrel, they're right? This thing is trash. Well, no, because the battles are exceeding what, over 5 schmel? I think it is 5 schmil battles. I mean, the next lowest level battleship is the Azumo, and that's 2.4 schmel. So you're kind of starting to see, right? And then, like, if we go to the top, excluding, the new ships, like the Los Andes or whatever, 149,000 battles with a 54% win rate. So you kind of see the difference of battles. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say the Los Andes isn't, balanced or not balanced. I'm not going to go there yet. But like for the next example, the Musashi, the down-tiered Yamato, right? I mean, that thing has 2.2 mil battles and a 54% win rate. So you can kind of gauge it off of that and see that, okay, so obviously as much as the Iowa is played, and that's ranging all different skill levels of players playing her, you can kind of picture that win rate necessarily isn't accurate enough to the how the ship is performing. And also not to mention that the Iowa and the Azumo are both, the older, they were both the original Tier 9 battleships in the game. So, you can factor that in. But I mean, everything else is not terrible. I mean, her average damage is about 59,500. She's averaging, 0.64 frags. She's not a bad ship. Honestly, and honest to God, I cannot say that. I did not mind her, and I find her to be actually pretty good. So, like we always do, let's go through the armor layout and go over some soft stats like we always do, right? First things first, you're going to see the armor layout, 32mm nose, 32mm ass, with that 38mm of plating. Not bad, not great in nowadays, but not terrible, right? With that 307mm belt armor that we have here as well, and we do have that waterline citadel. Again, to me, this thing's a little bit misleading. I reliably citadel these top tier American battleships, starting from tier 8 down to Montana. So you're gonna have to be conscientious about how much broadside you are showing and who you are engaging with. You have to be careful on that front. Going on next to our survivability, and I do want to double check. I read off the website too because I don't demount the upgrades on this thing. But we have 79,000 HP exactly. And I'm again, God, I keep rushing myself. I think it is good to compare this thing not only to the North Carolina but also the Missouri, as the Missouri is a clone of the ship with some subtle changes. The Missouri is clocking in at 78,300 and the North Carolina at the 66,000. So you do have a big jump in health coming up from that tier 8 category. So that is super nice. With the torpedo belt reduction, which is mirroring that of the Missouri at 25%. Again, I don't find that to be that good. It will help you out, but again, we want to try not to eat torpedoes. That's bottom line. Going into the artillery, I will display your turret firing angles here. Again, I don't want to touch base on them too much. Looking at the Iowa here, if I click on her, looking at her main battery, I mean, we have the front turret, which can go about 30 degrees to the rear. That second turret can go about 38 degrees, and then her rear turret coming to around 32. I mean, I found them to be pretty useful. I mean, are like not that bad personally in my experience. I find that to be relatively good. There are going to be better battleships out there that are going to have better firing angles, but again, Iowa for me is fairly comfortable with that. You are going to have to expose a bit of broadside to get that third turret online, but not too much. Still reliably, or not reliably, relatively angled, and you'll see examples of that as we go through the gameplay here for you guys. Again, she has the 3x3 406mm guns. She is reloading in 30 seconds with a 180-degree turn time of 39.1. With her range clocking in at 23.3 kilometers, which isn't that bad. If we go out to that 23-kilometer max range, just as a reference, her penetration does come down to 464 millimeters. Again, floaty shells, they don't seem to be as floaty, right, as we had previously, as the initial speed coming out of the barrel is 762, not like almost the high 600s with the North Carolina. So that's going to be super nice. They are floaty-er for battleships, so make sure that we take that extra lead if we need to and really gauge. It's going to really help you in these things. Usually something that helped me out was when I think I'm leading a target, just go a little bit like notch or two more, and that's really the sweet spot of where you want to lead this thing. You know, keeping in mind that the opposition doesn't maneuver ever so slightly or adjust speed, so you have to be obviously conscientious of that. And with these 406s, you do overmatch the 28 millimeters of armor, which some heavy cruisers have that 27 millimeter nose, and you'll go right through that. Again, with that crop angle, hitting. I'm trying to see, yeah, impact angle. If we are at max, we're hitting at 22.2 degrees. But let's say if we use something relatively, similar, let's say we're really going to be shooting those cruisers that are about taking it like a 13, 14 kilometers, it's going to be coming in at now 9.7 degrees. Again, their AP damage clocking at 13,500 on that. Touch note on the high explosive shells here with 5,700 damage with a 38% fire chance on these puppies with that 68 millimeters of penetration. Again, there are times to shoot HE. I found myself shooting a little bit more HE. Again, when I say a little bit more, I'm not loading HE all the time. There are scenarios in specific situations you're going to have to use that. I found myself doing that more with the North Carolina than I did the Iowa, as the Iowa does have, I don't know, it could just really chunk enemy superstructures. And that's with the North Carolina, Iowa, and the Montana. I find that even when ships are bow tanking, I can reliably, especially the Iowa and Montana, I can reliably hit that superstructure hits and really get like massive damage out of it, like 10,000, 13,000, right? Especially on targets that are choosing to bow tank against me. Very comfortable ship to use. The 10 times 2, 127 millimeter, 38 Mark 12 guns, and Mark 32s on the secondary armament there. Again, you have them. They reload in 5.7 seconds with that max range of 7.3 with 1,800 damage, 21 millimeters of penetration with a 6% chance of fire. I would not spec the ship for secondaries. I've tried it. The artillery, your main guns, are the bread and butter of this ship, and I feel if you're taking that away by going in the full secondary department, it's not going to do you any justice, as the armor in this thing is just not quite good enough to really get in there and brawl effectively while also punishing targets with your main battery. This definitely is a main battery focused battleship, as most battleships should. Most battleships should. This is your main damage dealer, so definitely you want to spec into those and utilize those to the fullest. AA defenses. Now, we touched on this in the North Carolina slightly. The Iowa does have a relatively nice AA suite on her with a continuous damage of the 440. Now, I want to double check I am not using flags. Oh, I guess I was extending the secondary range too with my flag. I apologize for that. Yeah, so it's 7 kilometers. My bad. But if we are looking at her AA, okay, I'm not specing anything into it. 440 continuous damage. As you can see, the numbers here on your right, when it clocks out to, I believe, 5.8 is your long range, going down to your middle, which is medium range, which is 3.5, and your low, which is about 2. I found it comfortable and definitely shredding planes here and there. Now, I don't want to use the word shredding because that might give you the false sense of reality. You can definitely shoot down a couple planes before the inevitable strike is released on your vessel. And then if they do stay in your AA aura, these things, as like we saw with the NC, can definitely shoot down a couple more planes for sure, potentially even wiping out the squadron, depending if you're fighting a tier 8 or a tier 10. Tier 10 carriers obviously are going to be a little bit more painted in the arse, as those planes are just better. Again, with super carriers, God forbid, but definitely tier 8s should watch out and realize when the Iowa is in play. Again, nothing that's going to strike fear, but they will have to sacrifice some amount of losses to engage on the USS Iowa here. And again, just a touch note, because we all know what the real damage is, which hopefully isn't getting removed, but right now it is on the clan test, which is the number of flak is up in the air at 8. With that flak damage, I have 1610 on her. So AA is not bad on her, right, guys? Okay, now we're going into the maneuverability. The maneuverability is coming in at 33 knots. Obviously, I have the Sierra Mike flag on, so disregard that number you see on screen. But we have 33 knot max speed with a rudder shift time of 17.1 and a turning circle radius of 920 meters. Obviously, with the rudder shift, you can see that I recommend taking the steering gear as modification 1. Now, why do I do this? Because we have access to the main artillery plotting room mod 2, and it's decreasing the dispersion, basically making it more accurate for us consistently. I find that the steering gears in that fourth slot allows us to swivel back and forth and get our third turret online and then angle back in necessary amount of time. So that we have 9 shells going down range on target rather than just the 6. Not saying the 6 isn't going to be accurate on its own, but if we can get 3 more shells going down range, that is increasing our chances of, 33% chance increased to reliably hit the target with, another 2 to 3 shells, right? And that, again, is huge, especially for a ship like this that only has 9 main battery guns. Whereas I don't want to say most, but there's definitely a good argument to be made that the majority of tier 9 battleships are packing that standard 12 already at this point. If not, there are some that have 8, there's some that have less. I get it, but usually it's around that range. So that's nice in order to utilize that third turret. And we're going to see that, right? I definitely do like incorporating my third turret as long as the situation presents itself in the right way and I know who's shooting at me and I know who I'm angling to. Again, that's something that is crucial in the ship. And then with the give the improved 18.5% repair, where the Missouri does not. The Missouri only has the 14% repair for 28 seconds, where we have the 28-second 18.5. They will see that. That is prominent, especially when you start getting HE spammed. The amount of HP that you can regain is super nice on this thing, which allows it to survive a little bit longer, for sure, right? Especially when you're in constant HE spam. Again, but the cool thing is she has the speed to disengage from that too, whereas other ships previously really didn't have that at her disposal. Concealment coming in at, well, again, that's not right because I take the concealment module on that ship. But if we're looking at on the ship parameters of the USS Iowa, the detection of sea is 15.7 and the detection by air is 11.4. Obviously, with the captain's skill and the module, you can get it down to 12.7, which is awesome for a battleship. This is super, super comfortable. And it's you're definitely going to want to utilize that to the fullest and make the most out of it to kind of surprise ships every now and then with that concealment value. It also allows you to disengage too, which I know I really haven't talked much about with this line, as the North Carolina was the first ship that had access to that kind of lower concealment. But with the 406s and the speed and whatnot, you can definitely disengage if you need be, given the fact that it's not a carrier game or submarine game, and depending where they are on the map. So yeah, some final thoughts here on the USS Iowa before I go ahead and show you the gameplay on her. I really enjoyed my time with her. I think I played around 10 to 15 games to really, grasp the USS Iowa for you guys. So I'm not just kind of throwing in a hodgepodge of a ship here for you. I really want to make sure that I presented you guys with good enough gameplay that you can kind of see and highlight just how effective the ship can be on the field, a battlefield if played right. That being said, when I found myself in super ship games or up-tiered games, she was a little bit hard in order to play the tanking role, just because she only has, the 79,000 roll, and her armor scheme just isn't quite to snuff where other battleships are with that, but she does have the 33 knot speed, which is amazing, and the accuracy, which is good. So I would definitely say the ship is going to be excelling at that medium. I don't really want to say long range because we still have floatier shells, but that medium range, anywhere between 17 kilometers to 12 kilometers is where I find the sweet spot for her. Obviously, going closer towards the 12 kilometers as it's shortening the distance that artillery has to travel and lead time has to travel in order to hit the target reliably and where we want to hit them. So, anyways, enough talking for now. Let's go on and get this game started for you guys. Alrighty, guys, and here we are loading in on Okinawa in our Tier 9 battleship, the USS Iowa. Overall, a pretty damn good game. I think it's going to highlight a lot of good things that the ship can do. And once again, we find ourselves not only in a carrier game, but we are up tier to tier 10. So it's kind of showing you the best of both worlds here. As the tier 9, we have the tier 8 ships here, which, again, I feel sorry for. +2, -2 matchmaking. Always a bit of a dagger. But then we do have, on the contrary, the tier 10s here that think they're going to walk all over us. The first thing that I would like to talk about with the USS Iowa is that this ship really does continue on with this line on the ability to really perform when it's sticking with its allies. I find a lot of the time that when I watch Iowa players, they just sail to a said flank and they really kind of isolate themselves, which, again, there's a time and a place for, especially not in a carrier game and especially not when you're up against, tier 10s. I think, well, not isolating yourself, but I mean picking a flank and really going way wide and trying to find those cross shots. But I think the best thing I could do here is really support my ships by getting in, relatively within this range of the cap, and kind of being a target for people to shoot me, which is what I want. I want people to shoot me instead of shooting ships like my Kagero or shooting ships like my Venetia here, who happens to be smoked up, which is obviously a great tool, as I know he's trying to sail in and support our allied Kagero, and maybe get that one massive saps salvo hit on the enemy DD and cripple him for the game. So doing pretty damn consistent damage to this Libertad at 18 kilometers, and we're already at 13,000. Even though I did land like the one meaningless shell hit on the Brisbane B there. Yeah, I mean, you're going to see the consistency of my artillery. Now, again, accuracy is more of a user error thing than it really is with this ship. As you're going to see like a salvo right here showing you that I am only human and I miss my salvos too, especially with ships that accelerate in the turns. They're always, providing nasty tricksies when you're trying to shoot them when they're in that max turn. So, again, recognizing the situation, they have a lot of ships coming this way. It would be stupid and foolish of me to sail in there. I would really just be isolating myself at this point. And just becoming absolute fodder for the tier 10 vessels there, especially that Libertad, who wants to get in close range to me. A little bit bummed out with that salvo on the Brisbane. Again, that is RNG working, and I know what I said. You're gonna be like, well, Floppy, didn't you just say this thing consistently lands? Well, I mean, yeah, I landed 2 hits. They just happened not to be Citadels, and the majority of the salvo went either above or below his ship. It happens, guys. You know what I mean? Like, to sit here and say, well, every ship is, every salvo is going to land right where you want, blah, blah, blah. Like, this isn't a Slava. This isn't a tie hang. Ships do have RNG, especially when you're clocking in a sigma of 1.9, which, again, is not bad. I know I forgot to mention that when we're in the port view, but the sigma of this ship and the Missouri do clock in at 1.9, which, in my opinion, is fine. I think 1.8 is usually the fine meter for me. Anything above that is really, okay, not bad. Like, it just exponentially helps the ship in that regard, right? So I do find the shells to be consistent, but sometimes RNG, RNG is as giveth and RNG is as taketh. It happens. So, I don't really talk much about AP DPM or HE DPM with battleships, just because usually you're either 26 second or 30 seconds, and that's without the adrenaline rush kicking in. There are some battleships that are 40 seconds. There are some battleships that are like 33, 35. Like, it all varies, and you probably know that before you're queuing into a battle to know, what your reload time is. That's just a must, especially in the battleship, again, where your artillery is your bread and butter. So, I mean, she does clock in at 243,000 AP DPM and HE DPM of 102,600. What does that mean? That means that she is a normal battleship and that you really don't need to pay too much mind to it, guys. I mean, if we're looking at actual, like, effective AP DPM, like, the most AP DPM is the Marlborough, but let's be honest here, like, the penetration on the Marlborough is pretty ass with its AP, and usually people are hucking HE downrange. And then the next one is the Illinois, which everyone knows that has a 10 or 11 second reload on Des Moines gun. So, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, you're in the mix, right? I think you're rated like 11th or 10th, yeah, I think you're 10th exactly, which you're just behind the Pommern, right? And the Pommern has 12 guns, so. Oh, actually, yeah, and you tie the Kearsarge, which is crazy, too, right? So it's just like, you're a normal battleship, don't have to pay much mind to it. I don't think we're really looking out of, this isn't a battleship you're like, oh, but the AP DPM, right? So it's just your standard battleship. You're playing this for more accuracy, more quality over quantity, if that makes sense. So, and that's why I do like her. I find that she's very good, especially with the broadsides that you saw with the little clips I played early on, like kind of like, wetting your lips here. And this is a prime example. Albemarle obviously is slowing down to utilize the island to cover. Clearly aimed perfectly right where I needed to aim, just slightly above waterline, and frickin' boom. Triple Citadel. I mean, again, what else would you want? Maybe do it a little bit quicker? I mean, I don't know. It's a very comfortable ship, and notice how I'm actively maneuvering. A big mistake I see a lot of Iowa players make is, again, there is a time and a place to bow tank. And I'm not going to say don't ever bow tank. I would try to not bow tank in these ships. I would do the rudder juking. If I'm going to be here, then I can like start reversing and whatnot. I like that. But if I can get all my turrets online and not having to sacrifice a third of my firepower, I think that's a win in itself. So highly recommend keep moving. So that is my second tip with the Iowa. So hang with your allies, actively maneuver, and keep all your turrets in the fight, right? That's the second point. The third point, let's know when to shoot and when to go dark. There are times that you have to let the broadsides present themselves. Be patient. The way that these shells work and the way they crop are with their fuse times and all this stuff, I believe our fuse time is the standard 0.03 seconds. Oh no, hold on. I'm looking at the wrong ship. That would be the Marlborough, even though I have a seeking suspicion that it could be the same. With our AP shelves, yeah, our fuse time is the standard 0.03 seconds. With that overmatch of 28 millimeters, standard ricochet angles, no big deal. But like here, we wait for the Puerto Rico to sail broadside. He's eager. He's too horny. He wants to get all of his turrets online at once. And look what we're able to do to him. That is a citadel on a Puerto Rico, guys. That is hard to do. If you look at the armor scheme of the Puerto Rico, eventually I'll do that thing down the road. Basically underwater. So the plunging fire, with the way the impact angle is, plus the penetration at these ranges, really help make this ship shine. If you play the ship too far in the back, like I talked about the NC, the North Carolina, you're going to really have a hard time and fail to reliably hit your shells. And then you will bitch about the lack of consistency with your shells hitting target, because I'm telling you, at that range, if you're playing 18 plus, dude, like you're really rolling the die if you're going to hit the target consistently and how much you want to do for you. It's no surprise if you're only landing 1 to 2 shells at that range rather than landing, the 4 or 5 that I'm telling you have a really good chance at landing if you play within that 12 to 16, 17-ish range around there. So definitely do that and use that to your advantage. Those are my 3 tips. 3 tips, and I'm telling you, that will help you a lot. Now, obviously, there's standard tips for battleships, right? There are standard tips for just the game, utilize the mini-map, know who you're fighting, that kind of stuff, and that is true. That's why I haven't really touched on that stuff, and you're probably like, well, there's got to be more than that. Well, those are pretty basic, and you guys should know that by now, especially, God forbid, we're here at Tier 9. If you don't, hey, maybe down the road, I'll make a video on, like, some stuff that I wish I would have known when I first started my first random battle. But we definitely want to play this ship exactly how I think I've been doing. I mean, is this perfect gameplay? No. Though I'm not to toot my own horn, this is a efficient level E badge I earned from this game, which is fucking awesome, because I think the majority of the battles I played, I got 1, maybe 2. But then again, you're going to see with the final damage score, you're like, that you got an E out of that? So I find a lot of players are playing this ship wrong, and I really want to help you guys play the ship better. So take those 3 things I talked about, and I'm telling you, you're going to get better results in your Iowa. And again, this carries over to Missouri a little bit. Missouri has a slightly different armor scheme plating, very, very minimal. You wouldn't even know about it because they refuse to show you a detailed armor view here in game. And then the Missouri has radar, but she drops that little improved heal that this has. So what's easier to play? What's better to play? Well, I think the Iowa is probably a little bit easier to play just because the healing potential. We need, that keeps us in the fight longer. Obviously, the Missouri is more niche, and the radar is going to be helpful in a lot more situations, especially because it helps counter, theoretically, your counter, which is destroyers. Again, good examples of AA in this ship. Really, the carrier didn't come and strike me. He must know. But we were able to, achieve victory this game, which is great. And again, I could go through and I could show 2, 3 battles, which some ships I do want to emphasize that on, but I don't think I need to show anything more than I already showed here. 169,000 damage, clocking in, and this got me, of course it doesn't show on the replay, but this did get me an E rating. And then when you have your, where is it? You can see on the damage I did to certain ships and whatnot, and the AA damage and all this stuff. The ship is just a really good combination of a firepower, coupled with a really good platform, in the essence that if you're playing within middle to longer ranges. This is not a brawling platform. It comes down to her armor scheme, and that comes down to overall what her playstyle is. But I'm telling you, you can definitely get good results in her if you listen to those 3 things I said. So anyways, Again, I don't want to keep it too long. I kind of said my spiel about, what she's good at and what she's not good at. So hopefully you guys like the video, and hopefully you guys achieve better results in your USS Iowa out on the battlefield. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I will catch you all next time. Peace.